Hey everybody, thought I'd do a quick election check-in here from the Content Minds on YouTube. Obviously, we're looking at just complete chaos in the polls, even I think in a more unprecedented way than we've seen in the last few years. This election cycle really represents, to me, as a sort of a mixed methods social scientist, really the collision of a deeply probabilistic enterprise that's polling in a open democracy with the really the first past the post voting system at large, and then also our particular in the United States here our peculiar swing state, key state based electoral college based voting system that really further complicates things and makes polling really such a difficult operation to conduct correctly. I think that's really the first point that always seems to be emphasized. I can recall in graduate level statistics classes pointing out in the 2016 election, hey, the pollsters got everything wrong. Why do we care about this at all? Why do we care about these people's opinions? And my professor at the time pointing out, look, this is an operation grounded in confidence intervals and crosstabs and matching test statistics to parameters. And there's so many ways for it to go wrong, and you always have a margin of error, right? That it just tells you how likely it is that what you found will fall out, where you found it. And ultimately a margin of error that says something is unlikely, but certainly not impossible. And that's what we found in 2016, and to a lesser extent, really in 2022 in the midterms. Right now we're looking at. It's really hard to remember, even compared to those election cycles, an amount of uncertainty and confusion that's really unprecedented. I mean, 538 is all over the place, and really simultaneously all over the place and tied. Right, they're being swayed by firms like Patriot Polling et al. These kind of far-right firms or right-wing firms that seem to have popped up a lot in the past few weeks, and who knows how good their methodologies are. Marist, on the other hand, really well-regarded polling outfit, has consistently favored Harris for months now. Emerson is a really well-regarded pollster. Obviously, the New York Times as well. They have some configuration of a tie across the board. Then you've got Ann Seltzer and calling Iowa for Harris quite easily. So really, this starts to show. Then this all kind of gets further complicated in the swing states, and in Pennsylvania this is happening, in Arizona that's happening, in North Carolina this is happening. The way that these pollsters control for different measurements to kind of make their samples more or less representative of what they're trying to, sort of the parameter space they're trying to emulate or fit to. This really can vary a lot from pollster to pollster. And there's a lot of commentary, being thrown around in the political and the polling commentary about who has the right, who has their finger on the pulse here. Obviously, the way this was controlled for in 2016 wasn't done very well, and there's a lot of sort of PTSD among pollsters of, hey, we messed up, sort of adjudicating who was likely to vote for Trump, how enthusiastic those people actually were. We sort of effed that up pretty badly. So they've been trying to accommodate for that really ever since, and there's some concern. Maybe they're doing that again. Maybe they're doing too much of a correction in the opposite direction. Vantage Data House, which is sort of one of a number of kind of new wave polling outfits that really focus more on like a platform of respondents, and they kind of do daily polls and kind of boast pretty high numbers per state. Really pretty impressive if you start to dig in to their methodologies. They came out, I think, yesterday with an article saying, hey, this is going to be a blowout in favor of Harris, and nobody's seeing it for this and that reason. They really noted, this kind of what I've been talking about, this potential overrepresentation of MAGA voters, potentially highlighted by, we're really seeing in Arizona and North Carolina in particular, a really interesting phenomenon where the Senate candidates seem to be getting, on the GOP side, seem to be getting sort of blown out and are simultaneously well known but not popular. And then Trump's numbers, in some cases, like in North Carolina, are almost 20, 25 points higher in approval than the Senate candidate in the same state, which is really, as they point out, which is true, that would be an almost unprecedented level of split ticketing. I mean, split tickets do happen, but they're not incredibly common, and they're usually very marginal in terms of the, you might have a split ticket where somebody votes for one party for Senate, another party for president, but it's a very tight, you end up winning a state or losing a state by a few points here and there. What we're seeing in North Carolina would be like a totally unseen, unheard of thing in terms of split ticketing. This isn't even getting into the sort of the betting markets and the allegations of crypto whales and the swaying those markets, and the allegations of gender bias in those markets. That's another emergent phenomena that's happening. I mean, whatever happens in this election, I think we've got a huge, and this can kind of continue to be a debate really since 2016. This will sort of continue to be a referendum on polling at large, the social science undergirding polling, just being really difficult to do, and potentially, as younger folks kind of unplug from certain types of communication, folks not picking up the phone for unknown numbers, that kinds of thing. I mean, that's really where someone like Vantage Data House kind of is saying that they have an advantage now is, we have a relationship, a trusted relationship with a scaled group of people that we can break down by crosstabs and kind of match up to parameter spaces to a given census report, that kind of thing. And they know who we are. They know that they can respond here. And in that way, we think we have a better representative sample of things going on. Meanwhile, this is all further complicated by the fact that early voting looks absolutely historic. I mean, in North Carolina, I think I saw a report saying they've reached 78% of the total turnout for the 2020 election has already been reached. So just through early voting, they're already at almost 80%. Probably by now they are at 80% or so of their 2020 numbers. Just in early voting, which is totally unprecedented. Those numbers tend to, in this context, those numbers are skewed heavily female, which is obviously skewed quite heavily for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz's campaign. Traditionally, if you can say that about early voting in the United States, it hasn't existed that long in a lot of these places, but that would be heavily skewed for Democrats. It's possible, again, in the speculation and the commentariat world, some people are saying that's actually not going to be the case this time because Trump has come out and said that he's actually not as antagonistic to early voting as he was in 2020. So really, it's all over the place, but we're looking at massive early voting turnout, which you have to think is good for Democrats in the sense that there are more Democrats in the country than Republicans. So that said, over the next day or two here, we're going to, obviously get a huge vote of confidence or no confidence of the polling system. I mean, I tend to think it'll be a vote of no confidence, whatever happens, because we certainly have at this point such a muddied picture, such an uncertain picture of the situation. If someone like Vantage Data House is proven correct, or the early voting numbers are proven correct, and this is something of a landslide for Harris, it would be a huge indictment of a lot of these pollsters. So yeah, definitely watch this space to see how these results play out relative to the polling organizations and some of these new wave polling platforms that we've started to see come on the scene, and then obviously also the betting markets, which I think in a more long-term and established context might make a really good way to adjudicate winners in elections, but right now it seems a little bit too emergent and easily influenced to really rely on that too much. For what it's worth, for my part, I think it's an easy endorsement to make. I mean, obviously, I try to take a pretty nonpartisan, pretty objective view of international relations, international studies issues, of AI policy, of technology policy. And if you enjoy, an administration that promotes democracy and plurality and open societies around the world in areas like Ukraine and Taiwan, I think it's self-evidently the correct choice to cast your vote for the Harris-Walz campaign. I think her campaign promises an international policymaking that's supportive of a liberal, rules-based world order. And I think hers is a campaign that promises to continue to try to perfect that world order, as flawed and problematic as it can be sometimes. So as always, thanks for watching. I'll obviously follow up on this as the election proceeds, and thanks again for your comments down below.